Most people thought Chuck Norris only stepped in when fists had to fly or when evil needed a roundhouse kick to the face. But they didn't know the truth about what happened at a sleepy little corner of Jackson Heights, where an old diner stood like a time capsule in a world that forgot how to slow down. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't modern. But it smelled like warmth, sounded like home, and served pancakes that could make a grown man cry. Locals called it Millie's, and for 26 years it was the unofficial heartbeat of the neighborhood, the kind of place where construction workers, teachers, bus drivers, and single moms all sat elbow to elbow and shared slices of life over steaming coffee. The owners, Sam and Gloria Moreno, poured everything they had into it: time, sweat, hope. They came to this country with nothing but a suitcase and a dream, and somehow, through late nights and relentless hustle, they built something that mattered. But dreams are fragile things when big money smells opportunity. That's where Carter Ryland came in. CEO of Ryland Urban Holdings. Sharp suits, colder eyes. He saw Millie's not as a symbol of community but as a plot of land that interrupted the blueprint for his high-rise condominium project. He didn't ask. He didn't negotiate. He made an offer that wasn't really an offer. The kind that says, sell or suffer. Sam declined. Politely. Firmly. That's when the pressure started. Anonymous city inspections. Utility issues. Broken windows no one saw happen. Lawsuits with no merit but just enough venom to bleed time and money. Fear began seeping in like water through cracks in concrete. Gloria stopped smiling. Sam started sleeping in the diner with a baseball bat behind the counter. Customers noticed the tension. Some drifted away. Others tried to help, but the enemy was too powerful, too connected, and far too invisible for ordinary folks to face. Except one man kept showing up. Same time every Thursday. Black cap pulled low, leather jeans, boots that told stories of deserts and dirt roads. He always ordered the same thing: black coffee, 2 eggs, sourdough toast. He tipped well. Spoke little. Watched everything. His presence was like gravity, heavy and calm. He never asked for attention, but somehow the room bent toward him anyway. Gloria had a hunch who he was, but she never pressed. Sam joked once, called him Walker. The man smiled, just barely. But week after week, Chuck Norris kept coming. Not for glory. Not for headlines. He came for peace. But peace doesn't last when corruption starts eating a town from the inside out. One Thursday morning, Chuck arrived to find Gloria wiping blood from the sidewalk outside. Sam had been jumped the night before. 2 men in ski masks, nothing stolen. Just bruises and a message. Gloria tried to play it down, said it was random. Chuck didn't ask questions. He walked inside, sat down at his usual booth, and stared at the empty seat across from him as if listening to a whisper only he could hear. That afternoon, he made a call. A short one. No emotion in his voice, but the weight behind his words could crush steel. Then he stayed late. Closed the place with them. Helped mop the floor. Locked the doors. The next day, a black SUV parked across the street didn't return. And neither did the pair of suits that used to sit 2 booths back, pretending to be regulars but never eating a bite. Chuck had made a decision. He wasn't going to let Millie's fall. Not because it was a diner, but because it was right. Because once upon a time, he was just a skinny kid in Oklahoma who found sanctuary in a place just like this one, a quiet booth where kindness and pancakes softened the sting of loneliness. He remembered the cook who looked after him, the waitress who gave him second helpings, and the way the world felt safe in that tiny haven. Millie's was someone else's second chance now. He wouldn't let greed bulldoze it into dust. Ryland didn't take the resistance lightly. He sent more than lawyers. He sent leverage. City permits disappeared. A gas leak mysteriously shut down half the block. Health inspectors walked in like vultures, armed with cameras and clipboards, snapping pictures of imagined violations. Sam's stress turned into chest pains. Gloria lost her appetite. Even the regulars started whispering that maybe it was time to let go. But Chuck knew something Ryland didn't. He wasn't just defending a building. He was standing up for the soul of the town. And he had no intention of losing. He started small, calling in old favors from even older friends. Former Marines, off-duty firefighters, journalists who remembered what honest reporting meant. Quietly, the network activated. Anonymous tips to news outlets. Surprise inspections of Ryland's own properties. A viral thread exposing corporate harassment, posted by a local college student who just happened to film one of Ryland's thugs slashing tires. A city councilwoman who once trained at Chuck's dojo stepped in with legal heat no one saw coming. Ryland's name began appearing in headlines, not for luxury towers but for strong-arm tactics and small business abuse. But Chuck didn't stop there. One night, under dim lights and half-wiped counters, he sat with Sam and Gloria and laid out a plan. No fists. No threats. Just strategy. Community rallies. A GoFundMe. A website. A hashtag that caught fire. Hashtag Stand with Millies. Celebrities retweeted it. News stations picked it up. Former customers returned, standing in line out the door just to show support. The diner, once nearly empty, overflowed with people refusing to let it vanish. Donations poured in. Enough to pay for lawyers. Enough to hire security. Enough to make Ryland nervous. So Ryland changed tactics. One evening, just before closing, a fire started in the dumpster out back. Not large, but symbolic. Meant to scare. But Chuck was already there. He stomped it out before it reached the wall. No one saw him call the fire department. No one saw him take a photo of the suspicious sedan idling down the street. But by morning, that license plate had been traced to a shell company tied to Ryland's firm. The photograph landed on the desk of a very serious district attorney. Quietly. Without fanfare. Without warning. Chuck kept showing up. Not just for breakfast anymore. He helped clean. Fixed the leaky sink. Talked to the neighborhood kids about standing tall. Word spread. Not because Chuck told anyone, but because people watched. They saw a man with nothing to gain give everything to protect something fragile and real. They started showing up too. A local carpenter fixed the broken window for free. A graphic designer made posters. A teacher brought her whole class to eat lunch and learn about courage. But courage doesn't stop bullies. Strategy does. Chuck understood that better than anyone. He wasn't waging war. He was building resistance. One person at a time. One story at a time. He knew the media could be a sword. So he wielded it quietly. Not for drama. For truth. He leaked documents, guided conversations, whispered names to the right ears. Every move calculated. Every step deliberate. No flashy stunts. Just unwavering presence. Still, Ryland wasn't finished. He pushed harder. Filed a final lawsuit. Claimed the land was improperly zoned. His lawyers came armed with binders and smug grins. The court date was set. Chuck sat in the back of that courtroom, silent, still, watching like a storm on the edge of the horizon. And when the judge asked for final statements, something unexpected happened. Gloria stood. Her voice shook. Her hands trembled. But her words landed like stone. She spoke of dreams. Of sacrifice. Of how this country promised people like her and Sam a chance, not a guarantee, just a chance. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just told the truth. And then the judge looked at the evidence. Looked at the harassment. Looked at the media firestorm. Looked at Chuck Norris. Didn't say his name. Didn't need to. Just nodded. Case dismissed. The diner stayed. Ryland left the courtroom red-faced and rattled. Chuck didn't gloat. He just tipped his hat, walked outside, and disappeared into the sunset like he'd never been there at all. The days that followed the courtroom victory were quiet, but they hummed with a tension that never really left. Sam and Gloria reopened Millie's the very next morning, putting up a small handwritten sign on the door that simply said, "Still standing." The regulars came back first. Then the strangers. Then the TV crews. But Chuck didn't return right away. He had a way of knowing when to step back. This wasn't about him. It never had been. It was about the diner. About the people. About the fire inside a working couple who refused to bow to fear. His job wasn't to collect applause. It was to hold the line just long enough for others to rise. But Ryland wasn't gone. He was just quiet. Too quiet. His lawyers stopped filing motions. His developers paused construction. And for a while, people thought he had been beaten. That maybe even Goliaths could bleed. Yet in boardrooms high above the city, he was planning something new. Something worse. Something legal. The rezoning of Jackson Heights had begun. A proposal submitted to the city council to designate the area for urban redevelopment. A technicality. A loophole. If passed, it would allow Ryland's company to claim eminent domain, not just Millie's, but every small shop within 10 blocks. A bureaucratic sledgehammer. Chuck heard about it from a friend in the mayor's office. A whisper. A warning. And just like that, he was back. Same booth. Same seat. Same quiet fire in his eyes. Gloria smiled wider than she had in weeks. Sam poured the coffee before he even asked. They didn't need to speak. They knew. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. This time, Chuck didn't work alone. The neighborhood was awake now. They saw what had happened. They knew what was at stake. Parents, business owners, high schoolers, they came together. Meetings in basements. Plans drawn on pizza boxes. Late nights filled with phone calls and worn-out markers. Chuck was always there. Not at the center. Just close enough. Just steady enough. When people panicked, he calmed them. When doubt crept in, he reminded them why they started. He called in more help. A retired zoning commissioner. A civil rights attorney. A documentary filmmaker. And when the day of the public hearing arrived, the room was packed to the walls. Not with suits. With stories. A single mother who found work at Millie's after her husband left. A veteran who said the diner was the only place that treated him like a person. A kid who wrote a poem about pancakes and superheroes. Every voice was a nail in the coffin of Ryland's proposal. And then Chuck spoke. Not loud. Not long. But when he stood up, the room fell silent. He didn't quote law. He didn't talk about justice. He talked about his father. A mechanic who worked 12-hour shifts and came home with grease on his hands and hope in his heart. He talked about how America wasn't just a country. It was a promise. A fragile one. Held together by places like Millie's. Places that fed more than hunger. The council voted. Unanimous. Rezoning denied. Ryland's project stalled. Again. That night, Millie's stayed open late. Sam brought out extra pie. Gloria played music from the old jukebox. Someone started dancing. Strangers became friends. Chuck slipped out the back. The street was empty. The air was cold. He walked for a while. Past the bakery. Past the barber shop. Past the cracked sidewalks and flickering street lamps that made the neighborhood feel like it belonged to another time. The next morning, there was a new sign on the wall above Chuck's booth. A framed photo. Sam, Gloria, and a blurry shot of Chuck leaning back in his seat, half smiling. Beneath it, a small plaque read, Our Quiet Guardian. Months passed. Ryland tried again. Quiet offers. Hidden threats. But the neighborhood was different now. Awake. United. Chuck didn't need to intervene anymore. His presence had become something larger. A legend that walked in boots and drank black coffee. The kind of story you told your kids to remind them that strength isn't about noise. It's about choosing to stand when no one else will. Gloria began offering free coffee to firefighters and nurses. Sam hired a local teen who was about to drop out of school. The diner thrived. Not because of money, but because of meaning. And every so often, when the door chimed just before noon on a Thursday, a familiar figure would take his seat at the back. No fanfare. No speech. Just eggs, toast, and a nod. The truth about why Chuck Norris defended that small diner never made the headlines. Not really. The news liked the drama, not the heartbeat. They missed the quiet parts. The planning. The persistence. The invisible war fought not with fists, but with patience and principle. But the people of Jackson Heights remembered. They remembered what it felt like to be seen. To be worth saving. They remembered that miracles don't always come from heaven. Sometimes they walk through the front door, sit in a corner booth, and say nothing at all. And long after the city moved on, long after Ryland set his sights elsewhere, the diner remained. Still standing. Still serving. Still believing. Because one man, one myth, decided that some places are worth protecting. Not for profit. Not for fame. But for the simple truth that when good people come together and refuse to be broken, nothing, absolutely nothing, can tear them down. And Chuck? He kept walking. Toward the next fight. The next injustice. The next forgotten place with a story worth saving. Because that's what legends do. They don't just live in history. They make sure the future has something worth remembering.